and I've given a lot of thought to what happened yesterday morning for me, and I was so grateful that my little mini crisis, or what I created to be a crisis in my mind, uh, happened just before you and I were scheduled for a coaching call.
Yeah,
That to me was divine intervention
always is. It's beautiful.
because it had a great impact. You being able to talk me off the edge, um, and to use the practices to bring me back to a, a place.
So let's tell people what happened.
Yeah, so I had an experience working with, as a rookie, a brand new email marketing program, which I don't have any experience with. And in error, as I was creating a draft, thinking I was going to send the draft to myself to see what it looked like and what else I needed to add, it sent it out accidentally to the entire list. And it freaked me out. Like my whole body was vibrating. I was stressed. My anxiety rose to a level I hadn't experienced in a few months. I was panicked, almost to a point of a panic attack. Uh, it was intense. It was intense. I was crying. I was a mess.
I love
And
I love how open you are, Susan. You are truly a way shower because you just dig right in and so humble. And this shit happens to all of us.
you
But
got to keep it real, right? I mean,
yeah,
it's the only way I know how, Jane.
yeah.
I don't, I share with people I feel comfortable with, but when asked, I share
Yeah. So
because
let's
it's so powerful for me for my healing, right?
yeah. So let's go into it.
Okay.
So here you were trying to create your first newsletter
Yeah.
and you made a mistake and um, had quite a reaction, right? And so that's a trigger.
Yep.
Something happens in your life where you get triggered. It's either it could be a person who triggers you, that something about them you really don't like that could trigger you. It could be something that happens outside in the community or in the political sphere. It could be a horrible storm coming, whatever. It could be all different kinds of things. And it can be things in our own life that happen like this. Okay. So a
Yep.
trigger comes up. And then what happens is we have these habits, knee jerk reactions.
Yeah.
So your knee jerk reaction was,
To beat myself up. And good.
and and that creates panic in you and possibly self doubt.
Oh,
A lot
lots of self-doubt. Yeah.
of
Like you're a
self.
loser. What are you doing? My God, Susan, Jesus, here you go again. You know, what are you doing? You don't know what you're doing. You're going to come across as, you know, it's the imposter syndrome. It's all of that swirling around and
Yeah.
crippling me.
And poor Susan, here she is, her first time making a newsletter, and she's already just so tough,
Ah,
so
um,
tough on herself. Okay, so this happens. How does this relate to leadership? We have Susan, who is an amazing leader, and she's getting ready to step even more deeper into her leadership, into really important work. And here come some habits and patterns that take you out of your potential, right? And so
oh yeah.
When we have an awareness, that's number one, about this happening, right? I am actually triggered here. I didn't know this a few years ago. I didn't realize these things were happening for me either. When we start to see it, now we can make a choice of how to deal with it. That's the most important thing, right?
Yes.
And so, as you were coming down on yourself so hard, what occurred to me is I thought, oh my God, Susan, I know you have a very high standard of work. You want things to be really great, it really in order. You're a hard worker. And so this sense of perfectionism, it happens to so many leaders, to so many people, because we want to do our best. But part of it is that we've been socialized to feel that we have to, if we don't give it our all and we don't achieve a certain perfection, something's wrong with us. Does that
Yeah.
relate?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, yeah. I'm not worthy,
Yeah, and
you know.
just talk a little bit about how is that you see that as a pattern in your life.
It's been a pattern for as long as I can remember. It comes from my upbringing and, the environment and that I was raised in and behaviors that were impressed upon me. So I just adopted those, and made them my default behavior when I'm triggered. And I really spent a lot of my day yesterday thinking about that,
Mhm.
recognizing that. As helpful as our session was in the morning, it still lingered for me.
Yeah.
But I took the opportunity, as we talked about, to do some shadow work.
Yeah.
So I did some after our call, I did some last night, uh, you know, and that was helpful. And I wrote in my journal how I was feeling and that this presented an opportunity for me to tweak, to do some things differently, to develop some new habits around triggers.
Mm-hmm.
Triggers will always come. Things will always happen outside. It's how we manage them. And I know that intellectually, but emotionally, it requires practice to really embody a new habit.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let me just take a step back so that we can bring people into this. So Susan's now talking about shadow work. So what I had proposed to her and asked her to think about is whether this trigger that she was having relates to perfectionism. And so she immediately said yes, definitely. And so what we do is, because there's such strong energy there, she was so triggered, we want to look at the opposite side of perfectionism. So maybe we can call it imperfect just to keep it simple, right? But it's whatever Susan feels is the opposite. So looking at the opposite, we're all on this, we're living in a world that's dualistic, and it's got the spectrum on both sides, right, of the opposite. So it perfect and imperfect, good and evil, skinny and fat, all these different polarities that we're working with, right? And
Yeah.
when you are, we usually are okay with being on one side of the spectrum, right? Like being a perfectionist. And so many of us have been bred to be like that. And so the other side is imperfection. And we have often an unconscious resistance to want to be that. And so we don't want to be that. We push it away. We get triggered by people who are imperfect or situations that are imperfect. We push it away, and that becomes our trigger. And so the work is to loosen up the energy about being imperfect. And so that's what Susan's working on now, is doing some journaling around it and trying to find out, how is it that I am like that? How am I imperfect? And you can just go through your day and look at all the different ways that you are imperfect. And the point of this is that the more that she can loosen up the energy around that, she won't get triggered by it as much. And so on the spectrum, we've got the both opposite sides, imperfect and perfect. We want to be more in the neutral, but being okay with being perfect sometimes and imperfect at other times, and it doesn't trigger us anymore. So we can be all of it. That's the end goal. Be okay with.
Or perfectly imperfect.
Yeah.
My girlfriend has a t-shirt like that, you know.
Yeah.
I wrote down from our session yesterday, as you guided me to do, is what are some of uh, the pluses or the advantages to doing things imperfectly
Mhm. So what'd you come
or
up?
messing up or, you know,
Yeah.
doing shoddy work, I think is the other thing we
Yeah.
kind of used as a term. Messing up, you know, making an error like I felt I did yesterday. What are the advantages to those things? How, and I wrote, so far I've got 11, and I'll continue to add that to that list.
Do you want to share one or two?
Sure, I have I have to grab it over there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or can you
yeah,
think, can you remember
yeah,
what you wrote?
yeah. It was by my bed because I added to it last night.
Okay.
So, what are the good reasons to be imperfect? Why is it useful to
Hmm.
be imperfect? Makes me human, makes me relatable, takes the edge off, cuts me some slack, it comforts me, lowers the bar, allows me to relax, shows me where the cracks are and where to shine the light.
Mm.
That was one of the ones lying in bed last night.
Yeah.
Allows me to pause and reflect. Shows me what the work really is, which is to be present. And the last one, number 11, is embrace my imperfection.
Yeah. And so just let's wrap this up so it's not so long of a video. But here's the important thing for the leadership part. For Susan to fully step into her leadership, this is a huge trigger for her. She needs to own being imperfect. And until she can own that, she will not be able to fully step into her leadership. It's that important. And so the shadow work that, some of you may have done some, it's such an important practice. It's probably the most important spiritual practice we can do at these times, because we're really starting to move away from this dualistic life of always having opposites, the good guys and the bad guys, the Yeah, so many opposites. The more that we can get into a neutral state and be more at ease with it all, we can navigate so much faster. And so there's a whole another layer of depth that we take our shadow work when we work together as a group. We move it to an embodied state, which is very powerful, so that you can really feel in your body, I am imperfect. And also own that I am perfect. I mean, that one's the easy one, right? It's the other side that's hard. Yeah.
That's so true. Thank you, Jane. I hope that it's useful to some folks listening out there and they can relate. Please tell me you can relate.
Susan, I love your vulnerability. It is such a gift that you have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jane. I really appreciate you and your work. We need more people like you in the world. Grateful to be your student.
Oh,
Thank you, teacher.
it is a joy. You know, we teach each other, Susan. You are such a help in my life with helping with doing these videos and many other things. I really don't see it as, teacher student. We're just equals. We have gifts we're sharing with each other. That's all it is.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jane.
Yeah. You're welcome, sister.
See you guys next time.